The mansion was silent, too silent. A gunshot echoed, cutting through the stillness, leaving a body sprawled across the cold marble floor. Blood pooled around the leader of the syndicate, his empire now crumbling in his death. His hand twitched, reaching for his phone. With trembling fingers he typed a single message. "It's done. The king is dead." The screen went dark, and the camera lingered on the hand as the final breath left his body. Was this revenge or something more? The world that once bowed to his power was shifting, and now, all that was left was chaos, a game played by unseen hands. The silence was shattered, not by sound, but by the weight of what had just happened. The king was dead, but his empire's ghost still loomed large, its shadow stretching farther than anyone could have anticipated. In the aftermath of Don Vito Lombardi's death, the mansion is filled with tension. Marcus Evans walks the halls, his mind racing with uncertainty. The power vacuum left by the kingpin's demise threatens to unravel the fragile alliances that have held the empire together. Whispers of betrayal are everywhere, and the room feels suffocating. Giovanni Rossi, the consigliere, stands by the window, his gaze distant. He knows what's coming. The pieces are shifting, and soon the fight for control will begin. The once unbreakable bonds between families are fraying. Ethan Li, the enforcer, has been silent since the death, his loyalty now questioned. What happens next will determine if they all survive the chaos that's about to erupt. There's a sense of urgency in the air. The Mafia empire, so carefully built, could crumble in an instant. Trust is a rare commodity in this world, and now, it's worth more than ever. Ethan Li strides into the mansion's darkened hallway, the sound of his boots echoing off the cold marble floors. He's always been the muscle, the one who ensured loyalty through fear. But now, after Don Vito's death, something feels different. The weight of his past actions bears down on him, and his resolve is starting to waver. He reaches the study where Marcus Evans is waiting. The two lock eyes, tension crackling in the air. Marcus isn't one to speak much, but today words are unavoidable. "This empire, it's collapsing," he says, voice low and steady. Ethan Li stands still for a moment, absorbing the truth. "You think I don't know that?" he replies, his voice a growl. "Then what do we do?" Marcus asks. Ethan Li's eyes flicker with uncertainty. "We wait. The storm is coming, and when it hits, we'll be ready." The air between them is thick with unspoken understanding, but neither one trusts the other completely. In this world, trust is a luxury no one can afford. As the evening wears on, tensions rise among the remaining members of the syndicate. Carlos Montoya, a loyal but ambitious underboss, meets with Giovanni Rossi in private. "We need a plan. If we don't act soon, the others will take control," Carlos says, his voice sharp. Giovanni Rossi turns to face him, his expression calculating. "The empire is crumbling, but there are still pieces we can control. You just need to be patient." The two men exchange a look, the weight of their decision settling on them. Outside, the sounds of a city that never sleeps can be heard, but inside, all that's left is a heavy silence. The Mafia families, once united by power, are now divided by greed. And everyone is watching, waiting for the moment to strike. The clock ticks as the night deepens, and the mansion feels colder, emptier. Marcus Evans paces the hallway, his thoughts a chaotic blur. Phone in his pocket vibrates, a single message appearing on the screen. He reads it, his eyes narrowing. It's from Ethan Li. "Meet me in the courtyard. It's time to decide where we stand." Marcus knows this is it, the moment that will determine the future of the empire. He steps outside into the cold night air, the courtyard bathed in moonlight. There, waiting in the shadows, is Ethan Li, his eyes burning with a mixture of resolve and suspicion. "What now?" Marcus asks. Ethan Li's gaze hardens. "We fight, and we make sure that when the dust settles, we're the ones left standing." The weight of their choices presses down on them, but there's no turning back. The empire is fractured, and it's up to them to decide whether it will rise again or fall completely. The silence in the meeting room is oppressive. Marcus Evans leans over the table, his eyes scanning the faces of the others in the room. The tension is palpable. After the death of Don Vito Lombardi, every Mafia family is scrambling to secure their own future. Giovanni Rossi, the consigliere, looks at the others in the room, his eyes cold and calculating. "We can't wait much longer. Our enemies are circling," he says, his voice low. Carlos Montoya, the ambitious underboss, shifts in his seat. "We need to make a move now, or the empire will fall to pieces," he adds. Ethan Li, the enforcer, remains silent, his expression unreadable. His loyalty to the family is being tested like never before. The room is filled with conspiracies, with every word carrying the weight of a potential war. Every man in the room knows that the next move will determine who holds the reins of power. The choices they make now will either solidify their control or destroy everything they've worked for. Marcus Evans speaks, his voice calm but firm. "We strike first, before they have a chance to react." The others exchange glances, the air thick with the gravity of their decision. The war for the empire has begun. The next day, Giovanni Rossi meets with an informant in the shadows of a secluded alley. The rain has started to fall, casting a cold sheen on the cobblestone street. The informant, a nervous man in his early 40s, hands over a file. "These are the players in the game," he says in a trembling voice. "They're moving faster than we thought. Someone inside your family is leaking information." Giovanni Rossi takes the file, his expression unreadable. "Who?" he demands. The informant shifts nervously, glancing around. "I don't know, but it's bad. Very bad." Giovanni Rossi closes the file and slips it into his jacket, his mind already working through the implications. If there's a mole in their ranks, it could destroy everything they've built. As the informant disappears into the night, Giovanni Rossi's thoughts turn dark. He knows that loyalty is the most fragile thing in their world, and now, with betrayal lurking in the shadows, the fight for control will be bloodier than ever. Back in the mansion, Marcus Evans confronts Ethan Li. The tension between them is palpable. "Do you really think we can trust Giovanni Rossi?" Marcus asks, his voice low. Ethan Li doesn't reply immediately, his eyes focused on the floor. Finally, he looks up. "Giovanni's loyalty is unquestionable," he says, but there's a flicker of doubt in his voice. "But I'm not so sure about the rest." The room feels smaller now, as if the walls are closing in on them. The empire is fractured, and every move feels like a gamble. Marcus Evans steps forward, his eyes narrowing. "If we don't act now, we lose everything." Ethan Li nods slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Then we do what we must. But we need to be careful. The wrong move could destroy us all." Marcus nods, a sense of resolve settling over him. The time for careful planning is over. It's time to make a decisive move, one that will determine the future of their empire. The decision is made. Carlos Montoya leads a small crew to take out a rival in the outskirts of the city. The man they're targeting is known for his ruthlessness, and word on the street is that he's been planning an attack on their empire. Carlos Montoya is determined to put an end to it before it escalates. "Tonight we take control," he says, his voice filled with conviction. The operation goes smoothly at first, but as they approach their target's compound, things take a violent turn. Marcus Evans and Ethan Li are both there, watching from the shadows. Carlos Montoya is caught off guard as his team comes under fire from an unknown assailant. The bloodshed is quick, and the bodies begin to pile up. Marcus Evans sees this as a necessary evil, but Ethan Li's reaction is one of disgust. The chaos of the night highlights the growing fracture within the ranks of the family. The deeper they sink into this war, the more they risk losing control. Back at the mansion, the aftermath of the attack weighs heavily on everyone. Giovanni Rossi is furious, the bloodshed threatening to undo all their careful planning. "What the hell happened?" he demands, his voice sharp and filled with rage. Carlos Montoya tries to justify the violence. "We had no choice. He was a threat." But Giovanni Rossi isn't convinced. "You're playing a dangerous game, Carlos. Every reckless move you make is a risk." Ethan Li remains silent, his eyes scanning the room. Marcus Evans steps forward, his voice steady. The Empire is weakening. We need to act now while we still have the upper hand. The tension between the men is palpable, and it's clear that their once solid alliances are beginning to crack. Every decision is now a gamble, and each move could be their last. The war within the Empire intensifies as old alliances fracture and new ones emerge. Marcus Evans watches as Giovanni Rossi meets with a rival syndicate leader in secret. The tension is unbearable. Whispers of betrayal ripple through the underworld. Marcus Evans knows that things are escalating fast. The meeting was supposed to be a covert negotiation, a delicate balance of power. But something doesn't sit right. Giovanni Rossi has been acting differently, distant, as though there's something he's not telling them. Carlos Montoya calls for action, suggesting they take matters into their own hands and strike first. They won't see us coming, he insists, a dangerous glint in his eyes. But Ethan Li, ever the pragmatist, warns against impulsive moves. If we make a wrong move now, we risk losing everything. Marcus Evans agrees, but his gut tells him that the cracks in their family are deepening. He feels a storm brewing, one that will rip apart everything they've worked for. The walls seem to close in as they prepare for the worst, knowing that betrayal could be lurking right under their noses. They are playing a game they can no longer control, and the outcome remains uncertain. The whispers of betrayal are becoming louder, and Marcus Evans is caught in the middle. He confronts Ethan Li, who has been distant, almost withdrawn, since the last attack. Marcus Evans wants answers. "You're not yourself lately. What's going on?" Ethan Li looks away, his eyes filled with conflict. "I'm trying to keep it together. This is bigger than us," he admits, his voice laced with frustration. Marcus Evans presses harder. "Then why are you acting like you're ready to walk away?" Ethan Li turns toward him, his eyes piercing. "Because I see the writing on the wall, Marcus. We're losing control, and I'm not sure we'll ever get it back." The air is thick with tension. Marcus Evans wants to believe in the empire they've built, but with every passing day the truth becomes harder to ignore. As the conversation continues, the weight of their reality becomes clear. They are spiraling toward disaster, with no clear way out. The trust they once had in each other is eroding, and the cracks in their foundation are impossible to ignore. Ethan Li steps back, his voice barely a whisper. "I just want to survive, Marcus. Do you?" The question lingers in the air, unanswered. As the syndicate's empire crumbles from within, Carlos Montoya plans to take matters into his own hands. He arranges a meeting with a rival syndicate leader to form an alliance. The stakes are high, and the consequences could be catastrophic. "We need to secure our future. If we don't act fast, we'll lose everything," Carlos Montoya says, pacing in his office. The meeting with the rival leader goes smoothly at first, but things take a turn when the rival demands more than Carlos Montoya is willing to give. "I'm not interested in half measures," the rival says, his voice hard. Carlos Montoya knows the deal is fragile, but he's willing to risk it. As they sign the agreement, Marcus Evans and Ethan Li stand outside, watching, knowing the dangers this new alliance presents. Marcus Evans is determined to hold on to power, but Ethan Li remains skeptical. "This could end badly for us," Ethan Li warns. "We've already made too many enemies." Marcus Evans doesn't answer. He knows that sometimes there's no turning back from the decisions they make. And now the clock is ticking as the new alliance sets the stage for a battle they can't yet see coming. Ethan Li can no longer ignore the danger that is looming over them. He knows the risks of the new alliance Carlos Montoya has made, and his doubts continue to grow. He confronts Giovanni Rossi in the quiet of the mansion, his voice low and urgent. "You don't see it, do you?" Ethan Li says, his eyes piercing. "We're being played. Carlos Montoya is too ambitious. This alliance is just a step toward him taking full control." Giovanni Rossi's expression is unreadable. "You're wrong. He's loyal." But Ethan Li can see the cracks in Giovanni Rossi's armor. "Loyalty is fragile," he says, his voice hard. "And right now, it's the one thing none of us can afford to lose." Giovanni Rossi finally looks away, the weight of the situation settling in. We'll handle it, but we need to act swiftly. Ethan Li nods, knowing that every move from here on out could tip the balance of power in ways they can't predict. The walls are closing in. Their empire, once invincible, is now in jeopardy, and only time will tell who will emerge victorious. As the tension continues to rise, Marcus Evans and Carlos Montoya find themselves at odds over the future of the syndicate. Carlos Montoya is becoming more reckless, pushing for a complete takeover, while Marcus Evans remains cautious. "We can't just throw caution to the wind," Marcus Evans argues, his voice tense. "If we push too hard, we risk destroying everything." But Carlos Montoya is relentless. "It's now or never. We take what's ours or we lose it all." The two men lock eyes, each knowing that their next move will determine who leads the syndicate. As the argument grows heated, Ethan Li steps in, his voice calm but firm. "Both of you are right, but if you don't stop fighting each other, the family will be gone before you even realize it." The room falls silent as the weight of his words sinks in. They are caught in a web of ambition, loyalty, and survival, and each man must decide how far they're willing to go to maintain control. The tension between the Mafia families has reached a boiling point. Carlos Montoya is convinced that the only way to secure their future is through aggressive expansion. He's rallying the family for an all-out attack against their rivals. "We take what's ours, or we lose it forever," he says, his voice steady with conviction. Marcus Evans remains conflicted. He's seen firsthand the dangers of rushing into war, and he knows that once the blood starts flowing, there's no turning back. "There has to be another way," he counters, his voice firm. "We can't just charge in blindly." But Carlos Montoya is undeterred. "You think we have time for diplomacy?" he challenges, his eyes cold. Ethan Li, who has been silently watching, speaks up. "We're already at war, whether we like it or not. The question is, who will be left standing when it's over?" Marcus Evans looks around the room, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. There's no easy way out, but the path they choose now will determine the fate of the empire. War is inevitable, but how they fight, it is still up to them. As plans are being drawn up, Ethan Li takes a moment to reflect on his place within the empire. He knows that war is inevitable, but he's haunted by the decisions that have led them to this point. Walking through the mansion's quiet corridors, he remembers a time when he believed in the family, when loyalty was everything. Now, it feels like a distant memory. Marcus Evans finds him in the hallway, sensing the internal conflict weighing on his friend. "You don't have to do this, Ethan," Marcus says quietly. "We still have a chance to walk away." Ethan Li stops, his gaze distant. "There's no walking away now," he replies, his voice heavy with regret. "We've crossed a line we can't uncross." As they walk down the hallway together, the walls close in on them, reminding them that their choices have already sealed their fate. The war is about to begin, and there's no turning back. The moment arrives. Carlos Montoya orders the first strike, sending a small team to neutralize key rivals within the city. The attack is swift, brutal, and efficient, leaving their enemies in disarray. But as the dust settles, it becomes clear that their actions have attracted the attention of much bigger players. News of the attack spreads like wildfire, and soon the entire city is on edge. Marcus Evans receives an urgent call from one of their allies, informing him that the rival syndicates are retaliating, and they're coming for everything. "We've opened Pandora's box," the ally warns. Marcus Evans knows that they are now at war, and the consequences of this war will reach farther than they could have imagined. "We need to prepare for the worst," Marcus says, his voice grim. As the first round of violence escalates, the walls that once protected the family begin to crumble. There's no turning back. The road to war is long and fraught with peril, and Marcus Evans knows that survival will come at a high price. As the family begins to regroup, Giovanni Rossi confronts Carlos Montoya about the consequences of their actions. "You have brought the war to our doorstep," he accuses, his voice sharp. Carlos Montoya stands his ground. "We've been at war for years, Giovanni. You just didn't see it." The two men face off, the tension between them palpable. Marcus Evans intervenes, his voice calm but firm. We need to focus on survival, not blame. Ethan Li, standing off to the side, eyes the two men with suspicion. He knows that the internal conflict could destroy them just as quickly as any external threat. We're all playing a dangerous game, he mutters under his breath. The room falls silent as the realization sinks in. The family is fractured, and their chances of surviving the war are becoming slimmer by the day. Every decision they make now could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. But Carlos Montoya is undeterred. We've made our choice. Now, we fight. The war has begun in earnest. The rival syndicates strike back with brutal force, launching an all-out assault on the family's operations. Carlos Montoya rallies his men, his eyes burning with determination. We fight back or we die, he says, his voice filled with conviction. Marcus Evans, though reluctant, stands by his side. He knows that they must fight to survive, even if it means sacrificing everything they've built. Ethan Li is ready for battle, but a part of him is conflicted. The bloodshed feels endless, and each life lost only deepens the divide within their family. We don't have to do this, Ethan Li says quietly, his voice filled with regret. But we will, Marcus Evans responds, his gaze steely. The fight for survival has begun, and there is no turning back. The battlefield stretches out before them, and as the first shots are fired, they know that this war will change everything. The aftermath of the initial battles leaves the family reeling. Marcus Evans and Carlos Montoya survey the damage, knowing that they've crossed a line. We've bled our enemies dry, but it's only a matter of time before they retaliate with everything they have, Marcus says, his voice steady but filled with foreboding. Carlos Montoya's expression is resolute. We'll crush them before they have a chance to regroup, he declares. But Ethan Li remains silent, his eyes haunted as he watches the blood-stained bodies being carried away. This isn't a war anymore, he says quietly, almost to himself. It's a massacre. The weight of his words hangs in the air as Marcus Evans and Carlos Montoya exchange tense glances. They know the reality of what they've unleashed, but neither of them can stop now. The empire they fought for is crumbling, and the only thing left to do is fight for survival. As the conflict continues to escalate, Giovanni Rossi calls for a meeting. The truth about the family's future is finally about to be revealed, and with it, a shocking betrayal that none of them saw coming. The meeting begins. Giovanni Rossi calls for the family to gather in a secluded room in the mansion. As Marcus Evans and Carlos Montoya take their seats, a strange unease fills the air. Giovanni Rossi looks at each of them, his expression unreadable. There's something you need to know, he begins, his voice measured. Something none of you saw coming. Marcus Evans leans forward, his instincts telling him that the moment he's been dreading is finally here. Giovanni Rossi continues, we've been played. The syndicate wasn't the true power all along. The words hit like a thunderclap, and Marcus Evans feels the blood drain from his face. What do you mean? He asks, his voice tight. Giovanni Rossi hesitates for a moment, then reveals the shocking truth. Don Vito Lombardi had always been controlled by a shadow organization, a global cartel with far-reaching power. The entire Mafia family was nothing more than a pawn in their game. The realization hits hard. The empire they thought they were protecting was a lie. The true mastermind behind everything was someone they could never have imagined. Carlos Montoya and Ethan Li exchanged looks of disbelief, while Marcus Evans tries to process the enormity of the revelation. The fight they've been waging was never about survival. It was about control. And now the truth has come to light. The battle for the empire has just taken an even darker turn. As the meeting continues, Marcus Evans tries to digest the shocking revelation about the global cartel. How could we have been so blind? He mutters, his voice filled with anger and regret. Giovanni Rossi meets his gaze. We were all in the dark. Don Vito Lombardi was nothing more than a figurehead. The real power lay behind the scenes, orchestrating everything from the shadows. Ethan Li steps forward, his voice harsh. And now they'll come for us. They'll wipe us out without hesitation. Carlos Montoya slams his fist on the table, his temper flaring. We don't run, we fight. That's what we do. But Marcus Evans is conflicted. He knows they're out of their depth. The global cartel is far more dangerous than any mafia family they've ever encountered. The walls seem to close in on him as he realizes that their fight isn't just for control of the city, it's for their very survival. "We need a plan," Marcus Evans says, his voice steady but filled with determination. "And we need to act fast." Giovanni Rossi nods. "There's no time to waste. We strike at the heart of the cartel before they have a chance to retaliate." The weight of the decision hangs in the air. The true war is just beginning, and the family must now face an enemy far more powerful than they ever imagined. The family begins to formulate a plan to strike back at the cartel. Carlos Montoya is eager to move quickly, wanting to show the cartel that they are not to be underestimated. But Ethan Li remains cautious, knowing that their enemies will be waiting for them. "They'll be ready for us," Ethan Li warns. "We need to be smarter than them, not just stronger." Giovanni Rossi agrees. "We hit them where it hurts, disrupt their operations and take out their leaders. They won't expect a strike from within." The plan is set in motion. Marcus Evans knows that this mission will either make them or break them. There's no room for error. As the preparations unfold, the sense of urgency grows. They can no longer rely on the empire they once had. Instead, they must adapt and strike with precision. The family is about to face the biggest test of their lives, and Marcus Evans is determined to make sure they come out on top, even if it costs them everything. As the operation begins, Marcus Evans is at the forefront, leading the team into the heart of the cartel's territory. Every step they take brings them closer to their goal, and to certain danger. "Stay sharp," Marcus Evans says quietly to his team, his voice steady despite the stakes. Ethan Li is on high alert, scanning every corner for threats. As they move deeper into enemy territory, the tension reaches its peak. Suddenly, gunfire erupts. The ambush has begun. Carlos Montoya leads the charge, his face twisted in rage as he fires back. Marcus Evans takes cover, his mind racing. The plan was supposed to be precise, but now it's chaos. The sound of gunfire and explosions fills the air as they fight to survive. Ethan Li moves through the shadows, his every move calculated as he picks off enemies one by one. The battle is brutal, and the cost is high. The family has finally gone on the offensive, but at what cost? As the dust settles, Marcus Evans surveys the aftermath, knowing that they've only won the first battle. The war is far from over. The final confrontation is at hand. Marcus Evans and Carlos Montoya meet with the mastermind behind the syndicate at an isolated estate, far from the chaos of the city. As the door opens, Marcus Evans can feel the weight of the moment. The enemy is within reach, but something doesn't feel right. Ethan Li is tense, scanning the room for danger. "Stay focused," Marcus Evans mutters to his team. Their eyes meet, each one knowing the stakes. The true enemy remains hidden in the shadows, and only one side will emerge victorious. As the tension builds, Marcus Evans finally confronts the mastermind, a mysterious figure shrouded in secrecy. The words exchanged are cryptic, designed to manipulate. "You were always a pawn, Marcus," the figure says, his voice calm and cold. Marcus Evans clenches his fists. "You used us, all of us." The mastermind smiles. "No, Marcus, you were never meant to win." Ethan Li steps forward, his eyes narrowing. "We'll see about that." The moment escalates, and the final showdown begins. The fate of the empire hangs in the balance. The confrontation escalates quickly. Marcus Evans tries to control the situation, but the mastermind is always one step ahead. "You're too late, Marcus," the figure taunts. Carlos Montoya steps in, but his rage blinds him. He charges at the enemy, only to be stopped by Marcus Evans. "We need to think this through," Marcus shouts. Ethan Li is ready, his fingers twitching near his weapon. "They're playing with us," he warns. Marcus Evans realizes that the battle for control of the empire will be much more brutal than he anticipated. The final battle unfolds. Gunfire echoes through the estate as Marcus Evans and his team fight back with everything they have. Ethan Li is relentless, taking down enemies with surgical precision. Carlos Montoya is consumed by rage, refusing to let the enemy escape. "This ends now!" he yells, pushing forward. Marcus Evans struggles to maintain control. "We're losing ourselves," he warns. As the smoke clears, the mastermind is nowhere to be found. The battle is far from over, but the price they've paid is immeasurable. They've lost pieces of themselves, and nothing will ever be the same. As the estate falls silent, Marcus Evans and his team stand victorious but broken. The mastermind has escaped, but the toll is heavy. "We've won, but at what cost?" Marcus murmurs, his voice hollow. Carlos Montoya is on edge, his anger far from subdued. "We take what's ours, Marcus. We take it all," he insists. Ethan Li stands apart, his eyes searching for any sign of the mastermind's presence. Marcus Evans knows that this victory is only temporary. The war is far from over, and the enemy is more powerful than ever. What comes next could destroy them all. The dust settles, but the scars remain. Marcus Evans stands alone on the balcony of the mansion, staring at the horizon. The weight of his choices presses heavily on his chest. "We've lost everything, but we're still standing," he mutters. Carlos Montoya approaches, his steps heavy. "This is just the beginning," he warns. Marcus Evans turns to him, his face tired but resolute. "Maybe, but it's a new beginning, Carlos. We decide what happens next." The mansion behind them is a shell of its former glory, a symbol of their empire's collapse. The question now is whether they can rebuild, or whether they've gone too far. The aftermath of the war leaves Ethan Li questioning everything. As he walks through the ruined estate, he reflects on the bloodshed, the betrayals, and the cost of survival. "We've done what we had to do," he tells Marcus Evans when they meet again. Marcus Evans nods, but remains silent. "But at what price?" Ethan Li asks. Marcus doesn't have an answer. "We fight for survival," Ethan Li continues. "But what happens when there's nothing left to fight for?" The silence between them speaks volumes. The cost of their survival may be higher than they can bear. Carlos Montoya approaches Giovanni Rossi with a grim determination. "We need to rebuild. The cartel is gone, but the power vacuum is still there," he says, his tone hard. Giovanni Rossi looks out over the estate, his mind racing. "Rebuilding will take time, but there are others out there waiting for a chance to strike." Carlos Montoya's expression hardens. "Then we strike first. We take what's left and secure it." Giovanni Rossi remains silent, his gaze distant. "And if it costs us everything?" Carlos Montoya meets his eyes. "Then we make it worth the cost." The final decision has been made. Ethan Li watches as Marcus Evans prepares to leave the mansion, ready to face the future. "This is it," Ethan Li says quietly. "We can't go back to what we were." Marcus Evans turns to him, his face steely. "We've lost too much to go back, but we can choose what comes next." Ethan Li nods slowly. "Then let's make sure we don't lose everything in the process." The two men share a look of understanding. The past is behind them and the future is uncertain, but they will face it together. Survival is no longer enough. Redemption is the goal now. The final chapter closes with Marcus Evans walking away from the mansion, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty night. The rings in the distance, but Marcus Evans knows that it will never be the same again. His soul is scarred, his heart heavy with the weight of the choices he's made. But he's still standing. The war may be over, but the cost of victory has never been so high. As he disappears into the night, the haunting question remains: was it worth it?